This is the Prepper Podcast Radio Network.
Have you ever wanted to generate your own supply of electrical power, even save money on your electric bill? If so, this is going to be the most important message you will ever hear. Solar power generators are now available. These emergency backup systems provide life-saving electrical power when you need it most. Unlike gas generators, a solar generator runs quietly, emits no fumes, and produces electricity from the sun. It's like having an electric power plant running quietly in your own home. Run sump pumps, shortwave radios, computers, and even keep your food from spoiling. Whether it's hurricanes, ice storms, brownouts, or blackouts, you'll never suffer through painful power outages again. And here's the best news, a remarkable fall truckload sale going on right now that gets you $1,700 in bonuses when you buy a solar generator. To find out why solar generators are the best generators and get $1,700 for doing so, go to falltruckloadsale.com. That's falltruckloadsale.com. Generate your own supply of electricity. Go to falltruckloadsale.com. That's falltruckloadsale.com.
Pioneer Living Survive, a true people publication, and online at www.pioneerliving.net. Here you'll find ideas and tips for people, the new pioneers, homesteaders, survivalists, and preppers who want to get back to basics and work with nature. It's our goal at Pioneer Living to inform as many people as possible with solutions on the forgotten, lost art of basic human survival. Pioneer Living is currently accepting articles for those of you who wish to share stories on the pioneer way of life, including homesteading, survival, gardening, preparedness, and simple back-to-basics living. By visiting pioneerliving.net, you'll learn how to build an open fire pit for cooking, making charcoal, tanning hide, survival food storage, survival canning and preserving, survivalist gardening, organic soil prep, and composting. In these unique and extraordinary times, now is the time to practice a self-sufficient way of life. Find us online at pioneerliving.net and start changing your life today.
The British Medical Journal accused a researcher, Andrew Wakefield, of outright fraud. People need to look at the details and not look at the headlines.
This is like saying the visceral response that they're trying to whip up in the public to try and crush this dissent.
Enough is enough.
If you like the efficiency of the post office, the confidence of FEMA, and the compassion of the IRS, we will love the nationalized health care bill.
Cover up our mistakes. What are withhold from the press and the public? Facts they deserve to know.
Don't let anybody make you think.
This is KPRN-DB, broadcasting worldwide from Southeast Oklahoma, USA, to parts unknown. This is the Prepper Podcast Radio Network News with your host, James Smith.
And hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is James Smith with the Prepper Podcast Radio Network News. All information provided is so that you can make reasonable and rational decisions on how you'll be prepping for the upcoming issues that I'll be discussing, because I have more faith in you than in anybody else in the media has for you. There's lamestream news, there's right-wing news, and now there's prepper news. News targeted for all preppers. We report current and pending legislation and how it affects you. Learn of potential hazardous weather and potential disasters before they strike, and understand how the economy is forcing you to make tough decisions. This is your news, news that you can use. Now, our Twitter name is @PPRN News. The news can be found at prepperpodcast.com. That's PREPPERPODCAST.com. And you can always give us a news story by emailing us newstip@pprnnews.com. We're going to go to a break real quick. And I just want to let you know that just as I was talking, there was a 6.6 earthquake off of Myanmar. I hope there was no damage. Be back in about 30 seconds. Alrighty, we're back. Now this is the disaster version. Now I used to do 5 or 6 different types of material in 1 hour. I'm doing these in little snippets. Makes it so much easier. Let's get started. Let's talk about the FDA and food testing that they are supposed to do of genetically modified foods. Well, the USA Today reports, and by the way, I get this from Washington's blog. This was done earlier this week. The question, does the FDA test these foods before they're allowed on the market? You're going to love the answer to this. No. Instead, there is a voluntary consultation process. Genetically engineered foods are overseen by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, but there is no approval process. Foods are presumed to be safe unless the FDA has evidence to the contrary, says Jaffe. The FDA, quote, has to show that there may be a problem with the food as opposed to the company needing to prove it's safe to FDA satisfaction before it gets on the market. Now, I don't know what planet you've been living on, but I've been living on Earth, and there's been a lot of studies that have shown that genetically modified foods may cause organ damage in the lab animals, tumors, and when I come on talking about problems in animals, I'm talking uterine prolapse, sterilization, premature abortions or spontaneous abortions, miscarriages. So genetically modified foods are not safe foods. There is a presumption that they're not safe, but do they care? Of course not. So my suggestion is if you have the opportunity to find organic food, if you have the opportunity to purchase from somebody who is right there, a farmer. I have chickens. You want to buy some of my eggs? Let me know. They're jumbo. They're yummy, and they're healthy. And I feel safe eating them because I know what I feed them is not genetically modified foods. Okay, let's talk about some other issues here. Okay, now this is a story that I wrote, and it's called, Is the Coast Guard Saving the Drowning FEMA by Taking Over Its Duties? So what I do is I frequently hit the Federal Business Online website, and I see what people are buying. And the Coast Guard really doesn't do a whole lot of purchasing outside of ammunition, some training, maybe some berthing, places for their people to sleep when their ships are being dry docked, that type of stuff. So in light of recent news articles such as Ineptitude in FEMA Food Purchasing Continues, that's one I wrote, and FEMA Disaster Relief Agency that's completely unprepared for disasters, which my friend Ed Corcoran over at Survival and Beyond wrote, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, is performing an in-run on government contract procedures by shifting the responsibilities from FEMA to the United States Coast Guard. Now, there's these little images on the article that you can find at prepperpodcast.com. Description of the supplies or services required to meet the agency's need, including the estimated value. Let's see. This is for emergency acquisition of supplies and or services, including construction and mortuary assistance, in response to tasks or operations necessary to assist in the preparation, disaster relief, recovery, and restoration efforts in the Mid-Atlantic and New England regions, which are regions 1 and 5. Is $10 million to ensure that the total value of this class justification is not exceeded, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so I took a look at the U.S. Coast Guard newsroom to see if they've got reports of their people on the ground. There's nothing. I went to the USCG.mil. Nothing in their newsroom that Coast Guard personnel today handed out 50,000 gallons of water to those affected by Hurricane Sandy. Nothing like that. A little further down, I'm sorry, this is the leading paragraph that comes through all of what's called justification and approvals that are being done. These are blanket contracts. Class then full and open competition in the purchase of supplies, services, and or construction to support emergency preparation, recovery, and restoration efforts associated with Hurricane Sandy. Now the justification is redacted to hide sensation, and it has been copied and pasted on every single one of these that I'm about to tell you about. Here's what they're requesting. Now this is the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard, ladies and gentlemen, the puddle jumpers, are requesting the following. Water, black water, which is sewage, and garbage service, food service, and these are all in support of the Coast Guard stations. Okay. Food catering service, refrigerator, trailer, and equipment, shelter in support of, Hurricane Sandy, sewage offload service, fuel for Sector New York's ISO Hurricane Sandy operations, in support of. As a side note, gas rationing is now in effect for New York City, happened a couple days ago. generator service. Now, the Coast Guard needs generators? So that's funny. But you see, FEMA has solicited to rent 300 generators, 9.5 kilowatt each, 120 volt. These are your local kind of generators, ones that you can plug in to the power grid so that your local folks have got power. Ground support equipment, crew for road cleanup. That's not Coast Guard, that's FEMA. Fuel tanks and diesel in support of Hurricane Sandy. By the way, they had 200,000 gallons of gasoline that was shipped over. That's what FEMA had requested. Now they're wanting more. So any form of recovery that the Coast Guard may do in any other situations never covers road stuff or garbage collection. So this is clearly outside the purview of the Coast Guard, and these are things that need to be handled by FEMA and no other federal agency. So we have to ask ourselves some questions here. Is the Coast Guard taking over relief efforts from FEMA? If so, why? Did FEMA's credit card get denied due to excessive disasters and now needs a loan from Big Sis via the Coast Guard's bank account? Now, once the Coast Guard's budget has been expended, will the U.S. Navy have to step in to perform drug interdictions and sea rescues? So regardless of finances, Big Sis and FEMA have been poorly managed, and Janet Napolitano has shown that she cannot lead a one-man marching band downtown streets. So once again, the boys in blue have to risk themselves and pull somebody out of trouble who's clearly way in over their heads. They're drowning, and the sad thing is, nobody seems to care. But I know you do because you're listening. So speaking of power and fuel, officials of New York City want the military to take over the power restoration. 2 congressmen from Long Island are asking the White House to send in federal employees to Long Island to take the lead in restoring power to a region where tens of thousands of people remain in the dark 12 days after Superstorm Sandy. This would be U.S. Representatives Peter King and Steve Israel, and they said they were sending a letter Friday requesting that personnel from the Army Corps of Engineer and Energy Department assume the work at the Long Island Power Authority, whose work after the storm the congressman called abysmal, and these echoed the criticism expressed earlier by Governor Andrew Cuomo. Yes, let's send in the government. I got bad news for you. Bad idea. Why is it a bad idea? Because it's not their purview. It's the state's purview. The New York National Guard, they actually have electricians that can handle this. And the New York Department of Energy should be handling this. Now, Cuomo, believe it or not, asked that FEMA support or pay the bill of all $6 billion worth of damage. Homie's got some cojones, because that is blatant. I mean, you're not going to pitch in? You guys suck the lifeblood. New York sucks the lifeblood out of the paychecks of those in Oklahoma, those in Colorado, and Texas. They take your money, and what do they do with it? Yeah, they waste it. They've never met a dollar they didn't want to get rid of. They must hate money, because they just throw it away as soon as they get it. All right, let's keep going with some disaster stuff. Now, preppers do not want to get, most preppers do not want to go into a shelter. That's why we prepare. We make it so that we can stay home. We can be with our loved ones. Well, this is another reason why. Now, I need you to remember what I tell you here, and then cross-reference what happened at the Occupy Wall Street camps. Let's see. I'm trying to remember here. Okay. He's been in this shelter for a few days. Now, it's freezing in there. You can see your breath. The Red Cross made an announcement that they were setting up permanent shelters up here so that they've been redone. They had wash machines and hot showers and state electric, and they sent us to a tent city. We got blank. The elections are over, and here we are. There are Black Hawk helicopters flying all over day and night. They have heavy equipment moving past the tents all night, so nobody's getting any sleep. Welcome to part of the disasters where people start falling through the cracks. No media is allowed inside the fence complexes, which houses operations for the JCP&Ls. I don't know what that is. It's something. Army of workers from out the out of the area. The FEMA website indicated on Monday that they have been a shelter for first responders, utility, and construction workers to take a break, even though the compound now contains a full-time shelter operated by the Department of Human Services. They're freezing in there. They have outdoor toilets, and there is snow, and it's cold, and they're horrible. Now, why does this have to do with Occupy? Occupy Wall Street tent cities had problems with rapes. They also had problems with diseases. If you want to get a good disease going, a good outbreak, a good pandemic, epidemic, you put a bunch of people in an enclosed area. Not just any kind of people, people from different areas. This neighborhood, if they're all intermixing, socializing, they're going to pick up each other's bugs and they'll develop an immunity to it. Mom gets it, passes it on to her kids, etc. But now you're getting people from different neighborhoods and different families, and they're kind of mixing and blending all these good bacteria and viruses. It's enough to make an obsessive compulsive just go, yeah, okay? Because it would. This is horrible. This is bad news. Moral of the story, have some kind of alternate housing planned. All right, we're going to take a quick break real quick, 30 seconds, and I'll be back in a jiff. Alrighty, we're back. Now, this next story is about the gas rationing. Now, they've been doing if your license plate's an even number, you get gas on an even day. If it's an odd number, you get an odd number day. Wow, that works. Now, they are enforcing this in the New York City and Long Island area. Now, according to one city worker, he says, it's even better than Christmas. It shortened up the line. At least you know you can get gas. And that gas rationing does work because he's been in, or Mike Unick had said that he'd been in Vietnam and it works. And people are less panicky, says Angel Sanchez, and he runs the Hess station on 4th Avenue and 30th. This is a much better system. They know they can get gas from me. The new system is better. But, it's sad that they have to do that because it's poor planning and poor management that resulted in this. Now, obviously, Hess does hold some responsibility, and any other gas station. If they knew a storm was coming, they need to have stocked up. They may have, and people just simply ran dry. Now, I read one story when a guy waited 30 hours to get gas, to get a can of gas. That's about 29 3/4 hours too long, but that's fine. So they've got gas rationing there in tempers of calm, but it shouldn't have. It shouldn't have. And where are they going? Seriously. If you're coming and going, then you're probably in the wrong area. Okay, there was a recent earthquake in Japan, deep below the ocean surface. It was a 5.5 earthquake. And let's see. It happened on Friday, and they're pretty much, once bitten, twice shy in that area. And it was a pretty strong one, fairly strong one, but no tsunami warning had been issued by the authorities. And let's see, now they later downgraded the 5.5 down to a 5.2 according to the Japan Meteorological Agency, and this thing was felt far and wide. Ibaraki Prefecture at 4.0 magnitude and Tamiji at 3.0. There was no large-scale damage, and that's always a good news. All right, let's talk about some more health stuff real quick here. Now, if you like your tomatoes, because I know I like my tomatoes, there's a new super tomato coming out. Now, this one is actually supposed to have been around since 1994. This is when the first genetically modified tomatoes came in. But they've disappeared. But they're going to make a comeback to you. Now, there's a transgenic, which means it's been gene spliced and all that. And it's called the flavor saver, which had a deactivated gene, which means that the tomato plant was no longer able to reproduce the polygalactorinase. It's an enzyme involved with fruit softening, so it's going to stay better longer. It can be left open, left to ripen on the vine, and still have the long shelf life. So they've got the good full flavor. So basically, you pick the green ones and you let them ripen in the house. These will ripen on the vine, and they still have a long life. Okay, so these genetically modified tomatoes did not meet their expectations. Although they were approved in the U.S. and several other countries, tomatoes with delayed ripening have disappeared from the market after peaking in 1998. Today, tomatoes are being genetically modified to produce a peptide that mimics the actions of HDL cholesterol, which they say reduces heart disease. Now, high HDL, which stands for high density lipid cholesterol, is a good thing. The funny thing about your body is it needs cholesterol. It needs it for your testosterone, your estrogen, your progesterone, your androgen. You need it for your hormones, epinephrine, things of this nature. Led by Dr. Alan Fogelman from the University of California, Los Angeles, so UCLA, his study found the consumption of GM tomatoes resulted in reductions of plaque buildup in arteries, which is also known as atherosclerosis. They roll out into major retailers as expected. However, no timeline has been established. So let's talk about superfoods. Superfoods. Now, why is this in disasters? Because this is about disease. I want you to be able to stay alive. Human disease is a bad thing. All right. What are we talking about? The superfoods. I'm just going to hit these really quick. The 7 foods that help you live longer. Kale. What's kale? It grows anywhere. It's a great winter crop. It's like a winter lettuce, you could say. Acai berries. I don't know about that one. Coconut oil. I have read a lot of good things about coconut oil. Chia seeds. Lentils and beans. Now, let's talk about lentils and beans real quick. Rice and beans, the preppers, stockpile for survival. Actually, it's a survivalist stockpile. Preppers like to have everything. But yeah, the high in amino acids. Great replacement for any kind of protein. Blueberries, my personal favorite. My wife, Beautiful Gorgeous, makes this blueberry cheesecake. It's a no-bake cheesecake, and sadly, I can eat the whole thing. And the next one's called maca. Now, maca is a root vegetable. Now, it's part of the brassica family, which is your cabbage, your Brussels sprouts. And it's been cultivated in the Peruvian Andes for over 2,600 years. It's enjoying a resurgence in popularity of research of it. Increases fertility in rats, dogs, guinea pigs, rams, cows, and humans. Woohoo! Yeah, I just got to do something about the other parts of the fertility aspects. So take a look at prepperpodcast.com. All right, I'm going to do one more break, and then we're going to do the one last story, and we'll do a follow-up. Okay, we're back. Now, what I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say some big words, and so I'm going to cut them down. Now, University of Maryland researchers have found an antibiotic-resistant, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. You know this better as MRSA, okay? At 2 water treatment plants in the Midwest and 2 more in the Mid-Atlantic area, which is, let's see, Mid-Atlantic is Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Jersey, lower half of New York, I believe. So it brings into question the health and safety of the facilities workers as well as individuals exposed to the wastewater. What many news agencies are not addressing, however, is the dangerous state of modern medicine in which we turn so eagerly to harmful antibiotics to get the stuff. Now, what happened with MRSA is Staph aureus is common. You get it, it causes impetigo. It's a golden crust that's on your skin. But MRSA, let's see, the Staph aureus, okay, so they tried to get rid of it, and they got rid of it, for like impetigo, and then it came back. It fought this antibiotic, and so they did another antibiotic, and it killed the staph. And then it came back, and then they did more, and then they came up with this one called methicillin, which is kind of like penicillin. Methicillin, okay, there's some family difference there, or family similarities. And then anything that, any staph in particular, Staph aureus, that will defeat anything that's methicillin-like in that level, they call it MRSA. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's just a spider bite. No, it could be actually MRSA. I've treated patients like that. So a new study was published in Environmental Health Perspectives and included the samples from 4 different water treatment facilities and their varying stages. Now, MRSA was found in 83% of raw sewage samples and in half of all samples gathered. MRSA was found in 55% of samples. You're not catching what the big problem is. When you take an antibiotic, what do you do within 4 to 6 hours of that? You go potty, right? And what has not been metabolized by your body hasn't used it or did not completely metabolize it, gets passed through your kidneys, and then into the water. And believe it or not, these antibiotics have been known to show up in water, but it's not killing this methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. They can find Prozac, fluvoxamine, Luvoxin, and birth control medication in the sewage, but the antibiotics are not killing this MRSA. After each stage of treatment, water contained less and less MRSA and MRSA SSA. That's methicillin susceptible Staphylococcus aureus. So it found less and less with each stage of those two. But one of the plants, one known for not chlorinating its water through tertiary treatment, did have MRSA in the final treatment process. Now, you'll find MRSA when you go anywhere in a hospital, you check in, they check you for MRSA. You go from one room to another, they check you for MRSA. You leave, they check you for MRSA. So this isn't tough. So this is a story you need to be aware of. All right, so let's close up shop here. I've done this for about a half an hour, and so I'd like to have your feedback. James, news at pprnnews.com. You may not think this is a professionally made one because it's not professionally. I just have an opinion, and I'm just speaking it. If you like what you hear, email me, news at pprnnews.com, and let me know. Only positive things. If you want to hear more, email me. All right? So I'm going to leave on out of here, and we'll probably work on another one tomorrow because I need to get ready for bed. I will talk to you all later, and I hope you have a fantastic day. But I'm going to leave with a final commercial.